Climate change will cost hundreds of billions of dollars in damage in the coming years. Add to that the adverse effects on public health, coastlines, and infrastructure, and you have the broad brushstrokes of the recently released 1,600-page National Climate Assessment. I asked Alex Barron, Assistant Professor of Environmental Science and Policy at Smith College, to explain the details.
The National Climate Assessment is a document that the federal government is obligated to produce. Congress told them to do it back in the 1990s. And so this is the latest installment. And it's a 1,600-page report prepared by 13 federal agencies, about 300 government experts. And it's the most comprehensive picture we've had to date of the way in which climate change is impacting the United States and the ways in which it will impact climate change, or the ways in which climate change will impact us in the future. And it's, I think, probably the most comprehensive assessment that any government anywhere in the world has prepared to sort of help us understand a problem like this.
And as you say, Congress, this is mandated by Congress. That actually was started, this most recent report, under President Barack Obama's administration. So it's not as if this is something new coming out under the Trump administration. And so when in reading, and again, I haven't read all 1,600 pages, and reading many of the summaries, though, it's really talking about how climate change is going to hit people's pocketbooks to the tune of, hundreds of billions of dollars in damage. Do you think that this might get people to sit up and pay attention as a result of, hitting them in their pocketbooks?
Yeah, I think, I certainly hope it does, because one of the things that always strikes me when I read a report like this, even as someone who spends a lot of time thinking about climate change, is the way in which climate impacts so many aspects of our lives. And those impacts are going to play out, especially as the climate change gets worse, in ways that are both economic and non-economic. So there's lots of sectors in the economy that this report projects could experience impacts in the hundreds of billions of dollars. But there's also things that is much harder to put an economic value on that people really value. So when we talk about the extreme temperature that we might experience here in the Northeast, those extreme heat waves can lead to premature mortality. Economists have techniques for putting numbers on those things, but the personal impact for the people who are impacted, have to go to the emergency room because they get overheated, are also really
other
exactly.
impacts.
For anyone who has a child with asthma, those are super scary experiences. And we know that climate change will make asthma more common. And so the hope is that scientists are being as clear as they can with the American people about the threats that climate poses. They're being clear that climate change is real, that humans are causing it, that it's happening now, that it's going to get much, much worse, and also that there are things that we can do to avoid those really negative outcomes. And so this report really puts the American public and policymakers in the driver's seat to decide whether we're going to sort of rise to the challenge here or really commit ourselves to a future with lots of really negative climate impacts.
President Trump and his administration have disagreed with a few of those things that you said. In a statement released after the report, he said, quote, or the administration said, quote, "This is largely based on the most extreme scenario of global warming, and that the next assessment coming would provide an opportunity for greater balance." Do you think that the circumstances as analyzed in this report are unnecessarily extreme?
So I think that statement basically relies on the assumption that people will not actually read the report, because if anyone who's looked in the report can see that it actually analyzes a range of scenarios. And so it looks at scenarios that involve a lot of warming, and those are consistent with a world in which we do very little to control greenhouse gas emissions. And they looked at some scenarios where we take reasonable steps, and then they looked at some scenarios where we take really drastic action to reduce emissions. And the position we're in at the national government right now is that the policies that the current administration is pursuing actually puts us much closer to that extreme warming scenario, because they're rolling back existing air quality and public health protections that would help us reduce emissions going forward. And so I think that that scenario is not extreme. It is a future that we could find ourselves in, and as we're planning for risk and as we're taking out insurance against the really extreme impacts of climate change, we need to be mindful of what those most extreme impacts can be.
Those policies that were put in place under President Obama's administration, and I should mention also, you've previously worked for EPA.
That's correct.
You advised on policy and in some other areas, but one of those two policies would restrict greenhouse gas emissions coming out of vehicles, and the other really limits what would come out of power plant smokestacks. What's the significance of those policies in your mind?
Yeah, so Ultimately, the solutions at the national level to climate change are going to flow through Congress. We need new policies enacted by Congress to help get the kinds of really deep reductions that we need to deal with climate change. But the Obama administration, in an environment where it was very hard to get Congress to come together and confront this issue in a realistic way, was working very hard to use the existing authority of the Clean Air Act to address the sort of air pollution and risks posed by climate change. And so both of those rules were really win-wins for American society. So both of the rules would have reduced greenhouse gas emissions, but also reduced a lot of other conventional air pollution that's hurting people today. And they were really important tools in sending a real clear signal to the market that the future we need to head towards is one in which we're reducing greenhouse gas emissions and deploying clean technology.
And when you say the market, you mean car manufacturers, oil manufacturers?
Yeah, exactly. I think, if history has demonstrated anything, it's that there's a lot of really powerful innovation that can happen in America. And we've seen time and time again, as the EPA has moved to regulate pollutants, that industry at first is often quite resistant, but that once we set the policies in place, they're really good at innovating and coming up with clever ways to reduce pollution, to do so at a lower cost. And I think that exact same logic applies in the climate space. If we tell electric utilities that they need to move towards less polluting sources of electricity generation, then they know how to do that. We just have to sort of set the rules of the road and let the market work. And the same thing, we're headed towards a world where all the other countries in the world are still actively pursuing their commitments under the Paris Accord. And
which we are no longer a part of.
We're in the process of withdrawing from it. And those other countries are doing things like setting mandates where they're looking at only electric vehicles or zero-emission vehicles in the future. And so if we want our automakers to be competitive in the future, we need to also have all of our auto industry on a trajectory to produce the clean vehicles that we're going to need in a climate-constrained world.
Something that I think people, when they hear climate, sometimes glaze over because they feel like it's this distant problem that happens in a faraway land and space. But the report specifically broke down regions, Northeast being one of those, and pointed out that the Northeast is already vulnerable, according to the report. Milder winters and early springs are impacting tourism, farming, and forestry, and I'm quoting here from the report. The region's rural industries and livelihoods are at risk from further changes to forests, wildlife, snowpack, streamflow. What have you observed, as someone who looks at, studies science and policy?
Yeah. As I said, the striking thing about climate is that it touches so many places. And so there are the climate impacts that that might come to mind initially. So these extreme heat waves, or we're starting to see more extreme precipitation events in the Northeast. The Northeast in particular, actually, is detailed in the report. And when you combine that with the fact that in the Northeast, we also have some pretty old infrastructure for dealing with flooding events, that just leads to trouble. It leads to more flooding, more damage, more expense upgrading our infrastructure. But it also plays out in things like I'm one of millions of Americans who suffers from seasonal allergies, and so you can expect to see those get enhanced. I have a small child, and every time she goes to wander in the woods, I worry about ticks and Lyme disease. A changing climate has been part of the story of the expansion of Lyme disease in the Northeast, and continued warming in the climate exposes us to risks for new pathogens carried by either ticks or mosquitoes. And then it plays out in strange economic ways. So it turns out that power plants are much less efficient when the temperatures get higher, and also people run their air conditioners more on very hot days, and those last little bits of electricity are the most expensive. And so it just means higher electricity prices for everyone as we're trying to sort of cope with a warming climate.
I know this is a broad issue and a big question, and something to ask you to condense may be difficult. One step that individuals could or should take moving forward in your mind?
So I think I'm actually going to echo the remarks of Dr. Vandenberg, who was on the program earlier, and say that there are important steps that people can take. So people can look at having Mass Save come in and make their home more energy efficient. They can look at buying an electric vehicle or some fuel efficient vehicle the next time they're buying a car. These big purchases are the places where they can have an impact. But a problem like climate change is not going to be solved by those individual actions. These sort of big collective problems that society needs to face are the reasons that we have government. And so if people do one thing, I would actually urge them to stress less about the choices they're making in their individual lives and focus their energy on asking policymakers to make changes in the way that things are happening at the city or the state or the federal level. So Northampton and Springfield are examples of two cities that are starting to think through these tough questions about how do we reduce our greenhouse gas emissions and prepare for the climate changes that are already coming. And we can also ask leadership in the State House to be enacting legislation that deploys renewables, provides transportation choices, and then really demand that our national leaders in Washington, D.C. confront the problem as real and a sort of almost existential threat to society, and are taking aggressive steps to bring emissions down.